Days of Jupiter is a hard rock band formed in Sweden. They've done 3 albums so far, the last album coming out in 2017, and now the album I'm reviewing is the 4th one, which released in 2018. So this album came out just a year after the release of the 3rd album, so not really a lot of time to really work on the album. But Days of Jupiter went on the record to basically state that they wanted to be more diverse with this 4th album, which is titled Panoptical, something like that. So they wanted to be a lot more diverse in their style instead of just the plain and simple rock that they have done previously. Now, I have just found this band, so I'm not really that well known with them. I just went on Spotify and saw one of their songs on the new metal list, which was the title track, Panoptical, and I kind of liked it. So I've given this album, obviously, a thorough listen, and I did go back and touch on their previous albums. And to sum up the previous albums, it is pretty much a typical hard rock type of thing that they have going. They do solos, some of them being just a typical kind of melody, which sounds kind of nice. Some of them a bit more melodic. Some of them does have a bit of speed and a bit of soul, but nothing too special. But they don't solo on every track. The 3rd album only had 5 solos out of 11, 12 tracks, something like that. So not overly great from that standpoint. The singer is great. They are heavy, so it is basic song structures and everything, just your intro, your verses and your choruses, and get a solo, but nothing really much going on. The verses all kind of remain the same, choruses remain the same. There's not that much diversity or kind of evolution as the song progresses. But they do have a heavy sound, so I've seen in their Facebook kind of biography, they kind of say that they're hard rock but have elements of metal, and I can see that in just how loud they go, but it's not exactly what I would call metal. If I were to kind of say a band that is kind of along the lines of what Days of Jupiter were before this release, I'd say they're along the lines of bands like Shinedown, Papa Roach, and things like maybe Stone Sour to a degree. Bands that are very just simplistic hard rock and don't really do much. They just give you a catchy, simple track or a nice melodic. And other than that, there is not much really to it. So this 4th album, with them saying they want every song to pretty much be extremely different from each other and stand out and be very progressive and everything, and to do that just a year after the release of their other album, so only having a year to figure that out when they've done nothing like this before. They're just simple rock. It's going to be interesting. They could fail pretty damn badly, or they could have had a potential there that has been hidden from all the fans as well as themselves. Untapped potential. So that is pretty much the sum up. Now let's get into the first track, Swallow.
Stand your ground, but never rise.
Swallow starts off like a typical progressive metal song, as in it starts very subtly and then builds into what the actual song becomes. So starting off, you just get the guitar, and it sounds very thin. It's very, very bright and quite shallow, and it's just kind of slowly kind of picking along very eerily. The volume kind of increases. Then you get the lead singer coming in, doing some whispering and everything, as they kind of slowly kind of creep it towards that typical kind of pound of the song, where everything kind of comes in at full throttle, typical of a lot of bands. So after that kind of goes on, the singer eventually, at the point, kind of aggressively shouts the line "swallow," and then the entire band kind of do come in with the heavy type of gain and things. But as far as the intro goes, in lines with technicality, there's nothing much really going on. It's just simple chords going with a lot of kind of gain to back it. And same with the kind of bass and the drums. It's just kind of like just trying to sound heavy, but not really doing much in the way of anything kind of musical or kind of interesting in a kind of technical aspect. Nothing musical, nothing really showing off, nothing soaring. It's just the typical kind of chord thing. Now, when the verse does come in, it's again very subtle. The guitar's doing what it did for the intro. It's just that very kind of thin, kind of glassy, kind of bright sound going on, and it's just kind of subtle kind of picks and everything. I don't think it would be that difficult to play. I don't think it's really chords either. It's some kind of simple thing to kind of give a kind of eerie type of feeling. Because of the glassy kind of bright kind of sound and everything, and it does kind of persist through this album. That's a tone that this band has, which is not the normal kind of tone of just brutal aggression and high gain. So they have a unique tone because of this. So they have an effect that makes it kind of sound different to just typical high-end gains style of music. So we've had the kind of subtle kind of intro build up, progressing to the big heavy part, and then it goes back down to shallow, which is kind of progressive, I would say. But everything playing so far has been quite simple, as in it's kind of played like a typical hard rock, but they're kind of building it around a simple kind of progressive metal structure. It is a bit weird. But as for the vocals, for the verse, he's just, because it's all light and everything, he's just singing very clean and very relaxed. There's subtle moments here and there through the verse where he does do that shout swallow, but the volume on him's turned down, so it's not very far down to barely audible. It's just kind of a bit kind of distorted, so it's not, the proper foreground main voice. You get the pre-chorus where it builds up to the heaviness again, so swallow back into the foreground with the aggression, and then the kind of where the intro got to a heavy part, that just heavy gain chugging and everything. And then before it reaches the chorus, the sound does kind of open up and gets quite light. And then the singer comes in for the chorus, and the sound is very open. It's quite nice and everything. It's not overly musical. The chorus isn't one of the best because it is open. It has the unique tone to them and everything. And it has, again, kind of changed the elements up a bit. So where we've got heavy, we've got kind of subtle with the heaviness. Then we got the heavy into the more kind of musical aspect. So the song is kind of changing, but not doing that much either. It's a very simple kind of progression thing going on. But as for the chorus, even though the sound does open up and everything, it's kind of just going at an open, slow kind of pace. There's nothing quite elevating about it. And then you just get the kind of intro heaviness back into the verse again, the typical verse, back to the typical chorus. Then you get a bit of an interlude, no solo, so it's just basically adding to the song just to keep it kind of flowing, nothing really going on. You do get another vocal standpoint, so you do get something different with the instruments and the vocals, which goes at a nice kind of grooving pace. It's probably one of the better part with the music and the voice, where it kind of sounds the most kind of fun and enjoyable at that point. Then you get back into the chorus, which the sound seems a bit elevated for the last part of the chorus, so you get a bit of a the instruments are brighter, they're a bit more louder and a bit more pungent in their delivery and everything. And then the outro is basically just the same as the intro. There's nothing new to it. So it's pretty simple musically, but there is changes. But it's not a drastic kind of constant change and grandness of what progressive metal should be. It's quite a simple step into progression. It's just very, very simplistic progressive metal. It doesn't do a lot. It's simple, it is progressive, and they do have a unique tone, but it's not really going far enough so far. It's still quite kind of held back by, I would say, their rock elements. But let's try the next track.
One in a million, we were dying breed, trying to make our mark through history, like an echo heard through.
This song is pretty interesting coming from this band. So what we have here is the intro again starts with just the lead guitar, but it's full on gain and everything, just proper going at it. Still pretty much just chords, nothing really great going on or anything. But I would say it sounds better than what we get from bands like Disturbed, where basically all the chords are just extremely simplistic and very dull. This is a very hard-hitting, very engaging, thrashy, punchy-sounding riff he's got going on. So even though it's simple, it is pretty good. So he goes on like that for by himself for a bit, and then the drums kind of come in. Some of the cymbal taps are not very bright. They're quite kind of crunchy, some of the cymbal taps. I kind of got that subtly in places. So the entire band come in, and before the vocals come in, you get another kind of sound change. Everything kind of strips down, and you just get that quite clean, bright guitar tone just going underneath, just dun-dun-dun, 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 dun-dun-dun. Then the vocals come in, and everything kind of comes back to the proper hard aggression and everything, and then the vocalist is just going along with it, but his voice is very nice and everything. He's not trying to be aggressive or anything with the rest of the band. So you got heaviness, and they're kind of going kind of quick, but again, it's all still simple. They're just making it quicker pace. And then the vocals are kind of grooving along over the top of it. It's got a nice flow to it. And then the song kind of extends itself. So at part, the vocalist and the band kind of stretch the sound out. So the vocalist starts holding onto the notes more, and then the notes that are being played are held longer and everything. So they just open the sound up for a bit. And then it contracts back down again to the kind of faster paced, quicker singing style. So we have a change there. And then we get into the chorus, which opens up. It's very fun and everything, kind of what you get in the typical hard rock band, just very kind of enjoyable, catchy chorus. But the interesting thing here is the second part of the chorus. Everything just shuts down, and then so you've got the very heavy, very fun chorus, but then it just completely shuts down halfway through, and you just get the singer singing melodically over just the simple melodic guitar, and there's nothing else. There's no drums. There's nothing. Eventually you do get a bass, but other than that, there's nothing really going on. And this lasts for about half the chorus. It's just the very subtle, clean kind of guitar, bright tone, along with the vocalist just still being pungent. He's not really quiet and whispering. It's just his typical voice, but he's singing it obviously in line with what's being played. And this is pretty amazing, because the good thing about this is you have full-on aggression, but then everything comes to a complete standstill, which people would take time to relax, and obviously you're waiting for that massive bombardment to come back in. And once the chorus is done, everything just kind of comes back immediately, just full on aggression again. And then we get back into the typical riff again, but the part where they kind of extend the sound, the singer extends and holds the notes, but the instruments keep going at a similar kind of pace. They don't extend as much. The sound still changes in line with how they did it originally, but they keep that sound and play just going quicker than what they did previously. So the band has now changed and kept in a more kind of fast time, but the singer is doing the longer kind of note holding. So that's now different. And then when we get back into the chorus, it's again the typical chorus start. But that first part, they've actually extended it, so that goes on for longer now. And then when they shut down and then it slows down, that's now different because the drums are more up front. So now that's different as well. And then after we have that, we get a kind of lead interlude. It's not a solo or anything, but it is kind of a nifty kind of leading interlude. It sounds nice and everything, but it's nothing, wow and flashy at all. And then getting back into the chorus again, the soft part is no longer soft. So nothing goes kind of clean and subtle. The gain still kind of remains. So again, it's changed. So this is now an extremely progressive song because the song constantly is changing. The verses were never the same. The chorus for all 3 times was never the same, which is pretty amazing and pretty incredible, and actually keeps this song extremely entertaining. And even though it doesn't have a solo, I could argue this could be probably my favourite track, just because it just always keeps you engaged. And with that chorus having the kind of hard aggressive part and then the really slow part and then bringing it back to aggression, it keeps me invested instead of it just being heavy, 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 and I've basically just got the one tone. My mind is being bombarded with different tones, different pitches, different styles, and different things going on, which leaves me interested. And obviously they still have that unique kind of tone to them, which is kind of a dark, kind of alien-y, kind of sci-fi type of vibe to it. Which so they have their own unique sound. So this song is definitely showing an evolution out of the hard rock into the progressive metal side, but they still have that hard rock kind of aspect about them. So this song is amazing, obviously, but let's get into the next one.
Be the unforgiven. Will you go down in denial? You can't pretend there's no fear. That in the end
I Am Fuel starts off again like the previous track, but just a bit slower. So it's all heavy. The band kind of are all starting together this time instead of it just being the guitars. But it's not fast, it's not really bombastic, it's just a heavy, kind of slow style of playing. Nothing too special about it going on. The verse, we get something quite different from them. It's mostly just the guitar again, doing that quite clean, bright sounding effect that he did subtly in previous tracks and quite heavily in the song Swallow. So that's what he's doing for the riff. There's not really much else from the band in the actual verse though. The singer is singing in a different kind of style to what he's usually done before. I don't exactly know how to actually explain this kind of way he's singing, but it is different to how he did Swallow. It's different to the previous track. It's clean and everything, and it's a slow kind of pace, keeping up with the pace of the guitar. The second part of the verse, he does kind of give it a bit more of a punch and a bit more of an attack, but just subtly. He just kind of gives it a bit more of heft to the delivery. The pre-chorus is probably one of the more interesting parts of the song. I really like it. Just how the guitar is just doing that kind of nicer kind of lead, just picking away the multiple kind of strings, slowly picking, and then the sound keeps kind of elevating and elevating as the vocalist is just seriously holding on to the words, just really holding them and everything, putting a lot of kind of hold into it and a lot of projection. Like, you can kind of tell that he's really kind of pushing this very subtly and seriously holding it. So it sounds great, and then with that kind of lead, it doesn't sound exactly like that. It's a lot more fluid than that. It's a real nice fluid, but it goes slowly. The sound is quite kind of open, so it's not very sharp. It's got a bit of openness to it. And then you get into the chorus, where it just starts off with the singers are saying, "I am fuel," and he holds it. The band again is just strumming typical chords, da 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 da. Nothing special at all going on with it. The vocalist, after saying "I am fuel," obviously his style goes a bit to somewhere else, but it's not overly too drastic of changes at all. You get the typical verse again and the typical chorus, but after the chorus you obviously get the change in pace. The instruments are very subtle, and the singer is just saying, "We all fall down sometimes." I think it said "we all fall down sometimes." And then the instruments are kind of just building and everything, and then when it kind of gets to the full build and everything, it's probably the best part of the song. As the singer just kind of goes and the band kind of just kind of goes, and it just kind of sounds pretty big, pretty huge, and it's a great sound, and you actually got a lead sound instead of it just being a kind of typical riff and everything and just rhythm. It's got lead to it, which sounds kind of nice. Then we just get back into the chorus. So vocally we get something different. Vocally he delivers a verse different to what he's sounded like before. We do have changes, and the unique sound is still there and everything. We did get that kind of lead with the singer going on, but other than that, it is kind of simple, kind of rock, but with sort of kind of progressive metal thrown in there. So not that bad, really, but let's get into the next track.
I can't believe that we lost all our sense of control. Where do you turn? Where do we learn? In a world who will burn. You can pretend, you can defend. It's still how it feels. It's still how it feels.
So I starts out on kind of a breath. So it sounds like a person just breathing in, just. And then the lead singer does the thing that he did in Swallow, which is aggressively kind of just say, "Why?" And then the entire band comes in. And then he keeps kind of subtly in the background. It's just kind of "Why?" And the volume's kind of turned down on him and distorted a little bit, just so it's not really kind of up in your face. Just saying "Why?" over and over again. Just now and then, just maybe about twice, 3 times in that intro. The instruments are all kind of heavy again. There's no real kind of cool lead at all. Just chords again, nothing too flashy. There is a second part to the intro where there is a bit of a lead from the guitar, making it just sound a bit more kind of musical and a bit more open. And then it gets into the chorus, which goes at a pretty decent groove. Now, a subscriber of mine, when I showed him this song, he mentioned it sounded a lot like a song from Shinedown, which I think it was Shinedown song Bully or something. Enemy? I don't know. The music video, they're all kind of sat in a room and everything, kind of singing to each other, and they get very angry. But I will say I did check the song out. I did hear it before, but I can't really remember it. But the verse does sound kind of similar, as in just how it kind of flows. Other than that, it is pretty different. It just kind of has that typical kind of flow to it. But here, obviously, the singer sounds kind of different, and then the instruments are kind of different. There's a different tone here. There's a unique tone. As for in Shine Down, there was no unique tone to it. And then halfway through the verse, it does change like the intro, so that kind of lead part with the Y's and everything, that kind of comes in and everything for the verse. Then you get a pre-chorus where the band kind of gets a bit kind of light and everything with the singer going. And then for the chorus, nothing too special, just kind of chords and everything, something kind of catchy, kind of memorable, kind of, hard rock, nothing really kind of metal about it, apart from it's just kind of heavy and it's got a unique tone to it. Other than that, it's kind of rock. Then you get back into the verse, which is pretty much exactly the same. The chorus, I think the second time maybe it's a bit longer, I'm not too sure. But we get our first actual solo here, so we do actually get a solo. And the solo is actually kind of weird for, let's say, hard rock, even metal. Because in metal, usually what you get from solos is shred and a lot of showing off. But this is very slow and quite bluesy and jazzy. Just a lot of a few bends here and there, and just a pick here and a pick there and everything. Just everything's quite subtle and everything just dun down down down. Kind of jazzy kind of feel. There's a part of it where it gets into a bit of a melody, but then the guitarist does kind of come back for a bit more kind of jazzy, bluesy kind of musical solo and everything. And then it ends. So the solo is actually quite long, because you get his first part, then you get the kind of musical interlude from him, and then you get the second part out of him. So it's actually a pretty great solo. Obviously, it's nothing technical because it is pretty kind of simplistic, but it's just the fact that it's a blue jazzy kind of solo in a progressive metal sounding-ish album, which isn't really done a lot. So it is actually, again, extremely unique compared to other bands that are actually kind of progressive metal. Obviously, there are progressive bands that do this, but it's not a lot, I'm just saying. So it's nice just to kind of hear this from them. And it was done pretty well, and it was pretty long as well. Like, I get things from Tremonti. Tremonti's a well-known guitarist, but his solos are quite short. This solo was pretty damn long. So, very good. So, not a bad song. Heavy, catchy, it has its subtle changes and everything. It has a good flow to it. And then it had a pretty good solo. So, let's get into the next one then.
Everywhere I look around, there's people desperate to be seen. Always skin deep on Facebook dreams.
So the self-titled track Panoptical starts off with the entire band kind of coming in, but then they cut out and you get that lead, which is quite well known throughout this album, the clean, bright tone, just going on kind of by itself. It's quite open because it kind of eerily kind of lingers. It's got a lingering kind of effect to it, so it's not sharp. And then the band come in with the da-na-na-na with the rhythm. So there's the aggressive rhythm guitar doing the da-na with the rest of the band, but then they cut out and you just get the da-na-na-na, which goes over the heaviness as well, and when they cut out it kind of still remains. So you actually do kind of get a lead, obviously, from just a da-na-na-na. It's nothing too great, but at least we get a kind of cool, eerie kind of effect going on, so you got a unique tone. It is a lead and everything over a very sharp, aggressive rhythm, which kind of comes in and out, which I think kind of gives it a bit of a kind of head bobbing kind of motion to it, instead of it just being all up there and in the front. You get a few seconds of extremely subtle, then a few seconds of pretty aggressive, back to subtle, back to aggressive. So I think that kind of contrast back and two is kind of nice. The second the vocalist comes in, it's just kind of him and the da-na-na-na. But then the band obviously come back in, and then I think the band kind of remain. I think that's the case. The band do remain, but that subtle kind of thing keeps going on. but you get a bit of lead out of the rhythm. So I think while that da-na-na-na is going on, you get the rhythm going out of the chug, going to da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, which again, it's not too drastic, but again, it's just layers, and the more layers, just the more there is to hear and listen to. So it keeps a vast interest and keeps things kind of going, and gives you more to listen to, as I said. So still good. The vocalist does kind of change style and kind of starts holding on to notes nearer to the end. As for the chorus, everything kind of just goes kind of more simple, so it's just kind of simple chords and everything. There's no real lead. And there's a typical rock thing that they do, which is at the end, there's a lot of whoa, whoa, which you don't really get in heavy metal. You don't really get metal doing all the kind of whoa, whoa-ohs. Bullet do, but they're kind of turning into a bunch of puffs these days, so that's why they do it. But you won't see the likes of Matt Shadows going whoa, because it's just not metal. It's not that heavy kind of darkness that you really want inside metal. So it's all right, because obviously it's nice to get subtle elements of rock, because two different styles of music, the kind of progressive metal as well as rock, you get two things instead of it just being one simple thing. But I must admit, the kind of whoa is a bit on the nose for me. The song kind of progresses similarly to how it goes until you get to after the second chorus. Everything calms down a lot, and it's basically just back to that very lead ghostly tone from the guitar with the lead vocalist. And the vocalist is very, very soft, very gentle, very fluid. It's very nice. And then before the solo kicks in, he obviously kind of elevates the voice to kind of elevate it into where the solo begins. The solo again is quite jazzy. I think it's a bit more to it than the song Why, because it just seems to be a bit brighter, a bit louder, a bit more kind of in your face. There is a change as well for the solo. He brings in a keyboard effect. So you get a completely new kind of tone, and sounds like there's a keyboard solo, but there isn't. It's a guitar, because there is an effect that's come out in the recent years that can make the guitar sound like a keyboard. So I believe that is it, unless they brought a special guest in, but I don't think they did. So you got that, and then after that, it goes back into the guitar tone. And the song ends on a bit of a shred, but it's not really great shred. It's just kind of a slow, speedy sounding thing, if you understand what I'm getting at. It's someone attempting speed, but they're quite basic at it. It's kind of what I'm getting at. Nice to see. Obviously, there's a bit going on. You still get the jazzy element to it, which is still great to hear if you're an avid metal listener, because you won't hear something like this a lot, so it's a welcome difference and a change of pace. Then you get the keyboard thing, which is, again, a change of pace, and then you get the bit of shred, which obviously metal fans have heard before, but it's good to at least try to just break up monotonous of just constant jazz, let's say. So, yep, that's it. Let's move into the next track.
In the absence of reality, gives me clarity to the key. And in this cycle where death gives life.
So we got an acoustic track here from Days of Jupiter, which we haven't got on the album so far. So bringing in acoustics for an entire acoustic track is extremely different. As it starts off, it sounds very close to Arabic, actually. Just that start sounds Arabic, but it kind of shifts out of that. But the intro with just the acoustic guitar, you got the rhythm going on, but you get kind of a lead. It sounds finger-picked. There's a lot of picking and holds and everything, and it's just like an acoustic kind of lead. to it. I don't know if it's really a solo, but it is quite lead-ish, so it could be borderline solo. I think it kind of comes down to your personal opinion. If you take it as a nice kind of lead and will accept it for a solo, or just an intro which is just doing something. As for the rest of the song, it all kind of goes along with the acoustic. The verse, there's seems to be violins. They're very subtle, but you can hear them in the background, some violins going on. So it's nice to hear a new instrument come in just to give a bit more levity to the song. The lead does kind of keep carrying on that kind of picking acoustic. And the chorus, the lead singer actually elevates his voice to a higher register. The solo in this is not acoustic, the actual solo. It's electric, but it's not jazzy. It's very, very blues heavy. It's not fast. It's not musical. It's just very slow, very laid back, quite depressing. But it is nice, obviously, because it's an acoustic song and it's very slow. So him coming in with a very, very Christmassy sounding thing would be just completely out of nowhere, weird, and not be right. So it's very bluesy, it's very slow, it's very sad, but it fits the song, which is obviously what works. He felt the song and he did a solo that fits in well. It's a short song, just 3 minutes 33. The other songs have been around 4 minutes, so it's nice to get something so different. And again, even though it's still kind of a slowish solo, it is way more heavily into the blues. And then we got the acoustic, maybe solo intro, depending on your opinion. So not bad. Again, something completely new. So let's get into the next one.
Through fire, it's the flag it proudly waves on. The boy has become someone. No winners or losers, it's all in my hands. I rise to be who I am. The sound of such a will.
This song is 5 minutes 31 seconds, and again, one of the more progressive songs on the album. The intro has a fair few layers to it. It starts off just with the lead guitar. It's got an effect on it to kind of make it kind of airy, kind of floaty and everything. Then the rest of the band start coming in subtly and everything, but before they fully come in, you get a kind of crunchy, thick effect on the guitar just by itself, just da 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 da, and the entire band come in all at once, heavy, leading into the verse. The verse for the first part goes along at a steady pace. You got the rhythm. There is a lead there again, giving that kind of unique kind of vibe and everything to it. The lead singer is got a weird kind of singing pattern to him. I find it a little unusual, this first part, but the second half he changes his vocal delivery style and flow. Then there's the pre-chorus, which goes, the entire band drop out. It's just the guitar with the very bright, clean sound with the vocalist. But then the guitar kind of gets into the kind of heavy gain channel and then starts building up in sound, which then leads into the chorus. So we've had a few changes already. The chorus is one of the better choruses. I just like the lead at its quick kind of speeding pace. It's not shred, but it's kind of quick and everything. It's got a great tone to it. The rhythms also underneath going quite quick and everything. And then the singing delivery just dun 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 dun. It's just quite entertaining, very catchy. It's a great sound, and even though it's simple, some simple things can be extremely effective. And I just think this chorus is very effective. And then so it starts off with the dun 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 with the lead, and then the rhythm, and then the vocals all going. And then the second part, it just kind of extends itself. It opens itself up for when they start saying, "We are the sons of war." The vocalist holds on to the words and everything. Everything opens up. So we get two different parts of the chorus. Then we've got we've got two different parts for the verse, and then two different parts for the pre-chorus. After the second chorus, again, we get the typical everything kind of slows down. You just get the guitar and then the kind of melodic vocal delivery from the singer, leading into the solo, which is again a quiet solo. It's very quiet. It's extremely quiet, this solo. Very, very subtle, very quiet, doing the kind of blues thing again. But it actually does change it up. So we get two different kind of styles of solos, because it gets louder. So it's louder, it's more heavy. But again, it's not really blues or jazz. It's more of a musical standpoint, because it has parts where it kind of soars, and then it has a bit of a shred part. But it never fully achieves what it's really going for, because there is soars where a soar comes up and it's like, oh wow, this is going to be a fantastic soar, which kind of just takes your breath away. But the kind of tone and the volume on it, it doesn't kind of hit a peak. It kind of soars up, but before it kind of reaches its peak, it just kind of he lets go of it and it comes back down again. And as for the shred part, it's not a really kind of musically fast speed. It's just kind of da 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 da, and it's just, yeah. So everything's there, but it's not done to the potential of where I think he really wanted it and where people are going to expect it. It's good to get the difference, because previously we've just kind of got blues, jazz and things, and this one's more of a musical with soars and everything. So even though it is kind of always stepping back and doing the bluesy jazz musical thing, he does keep it changing and everything. So he does try and keep it interesting, but he does seem to be held back, which is a bit of a shame. When the chorus comes back, it's just a singer by himself singing the chorus, and then the band eventually comes back in, which has been done by other bands previously. But again, it just kind of changes that up a bit, giving you something different. So that's it for Sons of War. Let's get into the next track.
Somehow silenced your mind.
So we have an orchestra here. So that's pretty great. So as the track pretty much immediately starts out, we immediately are given the orchestra just quite sharply delivered. It sounds grand, it sounds huge. It's great that they've decided to incorporate an orchestra, just adding a lot more depth, a lot more instruments, and just opens the sound up to so many new levels and new heights. It's a great welcome to have an orchestra. So it starts out with the instruments and the orchestra just dun 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 dun, and it sounds awesome. It sounds massive. As the verse comes in, it's just melodic, that clean, bright guitar tone. Actually, it's not bright this time. It's clean, but it's quite dark. And then we get the vocals over the top. Eventually we get to bass and drums, and then the orchestra comes in with the band, just a dun 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 dun, which leads into the second part of that verse, which is the entire band, and it's all heavy and everything. And then we get into the chorus. The chorus contains the orchestra for the whole part. It's not sharp, it just kind of plays along with the band. It's quite subtly actually in there, so it's not like two things that aren't fitting. They could both kind of meld quite well together, so it works. There's two different types of rhythms to the chorus. You get the first part, which goes along quite nice, and then the second part, it goes into a lot more of a rhythmic, very catchy, nice sounding part, and then it goes back to that first part again, which it's just the kind of more brighter, sharper kind of delivery. Then it goes into the more kind of rhythmic kind of side of it, and then leading out of that chorus to lead back into the second verse. It's the orchestra and everything again with the band. The verse doesn't start the way the first verse started with that mellow part. It just starts with the aggression, lasts a bit shorter, but then the orchestra brings it back into that chorus. Chorus is typical again. There's no solo, unfortunately. Here we just get a playthrough with the orchestra, which is just quite sharp. Just kind of, it just seems like just kind of strums, just dun 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 dun, very sharp kind of violin kind of thing. With the rest of the band as well as the vocalist, sounds great and everything. Then we get back into the chorus, which is just kind of like the one simple guitar, just da na 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 na, with the vocalist, and then everything kind of comes back again. And then as it ends quite grand with the orchestra and everything. And then the end is just that orchestra with the instruments, just that dun 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 dun, just sounding huge and everything. It's a massive song. It's very progressive. There is a lot going on. There is changes. Would have been nice with a solo, but there is a lot going on, and it is very interesting and very catchy and everything. That I do really enjoy it, even without the solo. But I wouldn't mind seeing the solo, but it is fine without it here. So, great track. Let's get to the next one. Coming off of such an intense song, Edge of Everything is easily seen as a bit slow and a bit drab. Seeing that the song before this there was a lot going on, it was extremely catchy, there was just so much going on. Edge of Everything is a very slow song. It's heavy, so it's got a very beefy sound throughout, but just everything is going so slowly and nothing really elevates. Like that intro, it's just heavy kind of chugs, no real kind of lead. The verse, this is kind of subtle, heavy chugs still, with the vocals just kind of mellow going along. Second part of the verse, they did kind of change it up just to give a bit more of a bite to it with the vocalist and the guitar. But there's not really an elevation. The pre-chorus kind of opens it up and it sounds quite nice, but then as it gets into the actual chorus, it's just kind of open but not elevated, so it's just an open, slow sound. And that's pretty much the whole song, is everything going quite slowly, a thick, slow sound that never really kind of peaks or escalates in any sort of way. It kind of just keeps going, which just kind of makes it a bit slow and a bit dreary, in fairness. The pre-chorus is nice, but it only lasts just a few seconds, and the chorus does kind of open a bit, but it's still slow. So there's just not really much for this song, and coming off of such a brilliant song previously, it kind of makes this song come across even worse, because you got so good and now we're getting so little. Again, there's no solo. You just kind of get the guitar and then a bit of bass and everything. But again, it's not really anything. Nothing hard, nothing great, nothing sharp and musical. There's not really much to this song, unfortunately. So let's just see what the next track has to offer, see if they can bring it back. The last melodic on this album is Shallow Side, and it starts off with a piano. It's very, very subtle. It's just like one key press, and then just kind of hold it, and then just go to another one key press. And then the acoustic and band kind of come in. and then the piano fades out when the lead comes in, the lead guitar. It is actually a lead solo, so you get a very kind of, again, blues, jazz, lead solo at the start of the song, and then it gets into the verse, which is, again, just kind of the acoustic in the band and the singer. The pre-chorus, the drumming gets quite heavy and everything, and I think the electric guitar does also come in. And then as for the actual chorus, it's actually heavy. So it's not acoustic or anything like the previous melodic. It's actually all electric guitars and everything, and quite powerful drumming. Still kind of dark and everything, but just a bit more musical than the previous one, which was a bit more kind of sad. Then you get back into the verse, back into the chorus. And after the chorus, you get a musical part with it's not kind of sad and acoustic. It's heavy, more musical, with the singer doing a lot of holds and everything. Eventually, he fades out, and you just kind of get the musical aspect of the band going, leading into another solo. So we actually get two solos here, which starts shred, then leads into saws and holds, and then leads back into shred, and that finishes it. So from that, not long, just shred to hold and saw into shred and done. So not long. The shred, though, again, it's not really good shred, and the saw was not the best of saws. Like the solo of Blackbird, Mark Tremonti coming in with that unbelievable kind of saw and everything, and the amazing kind of shred and everything, which really is really musical. It does seem laid back here. Good attempt, and it was good that there's two solos, two very different solos, the shred and the hold one, and then the bluesy jazz one at the start. It's good, but obviously needs a bit of work. So that's it for this song. Let's get into the second from last track.
When there's too much doubt, just makes us wanting more. Be careful what you wish for. We gotta push it down.
9 Tons of Lies is back into that more kind of fun and catchy kind of hard rock type of sound. So as the song starts, it's drums and guitar, but it's not heavy anymore. It's just got a typical kind of hard rock tone, so not real brutal, thick, heavy gain or anything. It's just quite, it's got a bit of gain, but not much. And it's drums, guitar, then just the drums, just and then back to the guitar and drums, and then the guitar cuts out, back to the drums. And that's basically how it goes all the way into the verse, and during the verse also. The singer comes in and everything, and he's got a nice flow to him and everything. It's really catchy. The best part of the song is the second part of the verse, where the lead actually comes in. So you get the lead guitar going over the top, and it just makes everything just sound just more technical, just a lot more musical, a lot more going on, just a lot more engaging, instead of after it, the pre-chorus, where it goes back to just the simple drums, and then just a dun dun dun, and then drums, and then dun dun dun, which is just very simple and simplistic. The chorus, this is one of these typical kind of hard rock, huge kind of catchy choruses with nothing really to it. No solo in this either. There's something in its place, which is with the singer and the instruments, but it's not extremely musical or anything. It's just a change of style compared to the rest of the song, just to give it a bit of something new. But nothing much to the song. It's basically just a fun kind of catchy song compared to the others they've done, and that second part of that verse is really, really good. It's just a shame there's not really more of that, because it's a very good part surrounded by things that are just kind of average, which is a shame for that part, because it brings that part kind of down. So let's get into the last track then of the album and wrap things up. So again, this track isn't really metal, progressive metal based. It's definitely hard rock with maybe subtle hints of metal in there. It starts off with the drums and the guitars just kind of come in, and then it kind of just keeps kind of flowing into the verse, and then throughout the verse, the same consistency. It doesn't really change. The vocals, again, very, very nice, very open, very clean. Just going along with the band. He does kind of change his delivery and saying the lyrics nearer to the end. And then the pre-chorus is just hold on to the notes with the music, hold on to the notes with the vocalist, going into the actual chorus. It's just a very simplistic chorus, which doesn't really do much in the way of elevation. It's just a simple, fun chorus. And then it gets back into the verse, which has a bit of a lead to it, so it sounds better, the verse to the chorus, because the chorus there's no real lead tone to it. As for the verse, there is kind of that lead tone to it, just kind of giving it a bit more of a bite. Again, no solo, unfortunately, to end the album on, so the last solo we had was the melodic track, unfortunately. So in replacement, the sound does get more dull, so it's not heavy and hard-hitting. It gets very relaxed and laid back and everything. And then as it keeps going, it just kind of keeps progressing and adding and adding and adding until it gets back to that same kind of level as the chorus. And then obviously just lead into the chorus to end the song. And that is the end of the album. So overall, we get 5 solos out of 12 tracks. So there's more songs without solos than there is with solos. Now this is a problem because in metal, well, in good metal bands, because there is a lot of metal out there that don't even bother with solos and they're just lazy and talentless hacks. But in proper real metal, it's about showmanship of doing a lot of shred, a lot of blues, a lot of jazz, a lot of musical stuff, a lot of holds, a lot of soaring, and pinched harmonics, sweep picks, just a lot of technical stuff. And they use a lot of solos in what typical metal really is. So not doing that is kind of a waste on that kind of progressive metal element they're going for. Because the people who are into progressive metal are going to want some real great talented solos. Now the 5 we got, he did vary it up. We got a bluesy one, then we got a jazzy one, then we got an acoustic-y kind of one. And then we got ones with source, then we got one with a bit of speed, then we had one with a tone that sounded a bit like a keyboard. So he tried his best, but clearly he's held back because I do think that this band is definitely just hard rock. It is what they are. So them going and trying progressive metal is definitely a leap in what they are usually capable of. So he tried his best with what he had, but he does need to do more. And again, every song is going to pretty much need a solo. Maybe not every one, maybe the odd one without could be acceptable, but you definitely need more than just a lousy 5 out of 12. So more solos, and just keep working on that speed and doing some more soars and being a bit more musical. Just keep working at it, because if you want to be progressive metal, you need a great guitar player. So there's that. As for the actual songs, we've had a few which are quite typical. The last 2 songs were quite typical rock, and then the first one, Swallow, had metal kind of elements to it, but it was still kind of typical in structure. Then we had other songs that had a lot of structure, a lot going on, lots of layers to them, which was quite big and grand. So there was a lot going on. So we do have a very progressive album where each track does kind of keep changing. We've had a lot delivered to us. So they have achieved that progression side of things. And some tracks need a bit more added to them, like Swallow needs a bit more kind of layer, as well as the last 2 tracks. You had a unique tone to you, which is great, because instead of just being a typical kind of plug our guitars in, turn the gain up, and that is it. You had a tone to distinguish yourselves from that very repetitive, typical thing that is done by millions of other bands. You had an orchestra brought in, so you actually were able to incorporate that. I would like to see more of that in the future. But the vocals were great. He did change it up. He changed how it flows. They changed how the songs flow and everything. So with that was great. And I got to give him credit because, as I said at the beginning of this review, this is just a year in the working, because they already released an album in 2017 and this came out in 2018. So they only had a year to do this, probably even less than that, because they didn't have all of 2018. And in 2017 they probably had to tour with the thing and everything. And this was obviously way outside of their comfort zone. They didn't have years to work on this, so there was that. And they developed something that was pretty damn great. And if they had solos in every single song, if the guitarist could do better shred and better holds and better melodies, that would have massively increased the score. And if there was a bit more lead from him in the actual songs, instead of it just being just rhythm based, that would have got my score if there was just a solo in every track and the solos were better and there was more lead throughout the songs. This album could be potentially a 9 out of 10. Because there is a lot of diversity and it has a unique tone to it, and the vocals are brilliant. And I like the layers and everything. And then the typical songs would be okay if you just had a solo, but without the solo and it just being typical, it just comes across as a bit typical. But if you just had the simple structure, it would have just been a song where you could argue, well, it's just a more kind of fun, catchy song where you can just relax to and not put a lot of thought process into it. But you need a lead over the top of it and a lead solo just to kind of keep it a bit more kind of engaging, instead of kind of slowing it down a lot compared to coming off of things that are very progressive metal, then coming out into complete hard rock. So giving a score on this album, I've been kind of all over the place because I like solos, but there's not a lot of solos. There's not a lot of leads in the songs. There is leads in places, and then there's leads without places. It's progressive metal, but then it's also hard rock. There is a massive variety of changes. The solos that are there are very different to what I usually get, which are a lot of blues and jazz, which is great to hear in a kind of progressive-ish metal band, because you usually just get tons of shred, so that's great to hear as well. But then it's held back because there's not a lot of solos. The solos are quite limited because they don't go to the shred aspect and epic saws and epic musical stuff. And some structures, there's not as many layers as other songs. And then there's an identity crisis of, is it progressive metal or is it rock? So I've been kind of all over the spectrum of a high score or a low score, but I'm going to give this a 7.5. It's definitely above average, and it's good, but it does things that are better than good, because, as I said, if they just had leads in the songs and just every song had a solo and they were a lot more diverse, everything else is already there. It's basically just these subtle things that is just kind of floors the album. But just add solos in every song and have them good. That is basically all that's missing, but it's a fundamental thing that's missing, which is why it kind of drags it down quite drastically. But bring that in, because everything else is so perfectly in there. The score soars to a very kind of high level. But 7.5, it's above average, it's good, and it is kind of better than good. But there are certain tracks which it's just kind of a typical rock track and nothing too special. Then there's tracks which are very, very special and very good and got great tones and everything, and so much in the way of structure and diversity throughout the album, and solos that are not really seen by typical metal players. So there is a lot there to kind of have that score kind of go up. But then there is things missing that brings it down. So overall, that is the review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank